All right, strap in, everyone. Today's deep dive takes us right into the thick of it. The Russia-Ukraine war. Things are, well, they're getting pretty intense, especially around this city, Pokrovsk. We're looking at this Newsweek article. A Ukraine map shows Russian push to encircle heavily fortified linchpin town from, let's see, just the other day, January 13th, 2025. And let me tell you, it's a real page turner.
Yeah, it is. What's really interesting to me here, I think, is how Russia's going about this. Like they're using this classic encirclement strategy, around this one city, Pokrovsk, almost like a modern day siege, you could say. They're trying to squeeze it out, not a direct assault, which could have some massive implications for the whole war, really.
Okay, so Pokrovsk itself, we should say, it's in that Donetsk region, which everyone knows is hotly contested. Russia wants it all.
Yeah.
But why is this one city such a big deal? The article calls it a linchpin, but what does that actually mean on the ground? Like, what does that actually look like?
Well, I think the best way to think about it is imagine Pokrovsk like the central nervous system for Ukraine's defenses in that whole area. It's heavily fortified. It's almost like a fortress city, and it acts as this huge supply hub, Oh,
wow.
It's also linked to all these other key defensive positions. So if it falls, it's not just territory lost. It's a huge chunk of Ukraine's fighting power in the east.
Wow.
Okay,
so Russia going after it makes sense, but skipping a direct attack seems risky. I mean, are they just trying to avoid a bloody, urban fight?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I mean, urban warfare it's brutal. It's unpredictable, even for the attacker. But there's also, I think, a deeper strategic layer at play. So by encircling Pokrovsk, Russia's aiming to cut off its supply lines, basically starve it out.
Oh.
So you force Ukrainian troops to either retreat or face a fight with dwindling resources and reinforcements.
Sneaky. So the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, those folks who track all, the frontline stuff, their maps are backing this up, right? I mean, they're showing Russia advancing southwest of the city.
Exactly. And they're not just blindly pushing forward. They're going after very specific villages. It's almost surgical to really tighten that noose. In fact, the Newsweek article, they quote Major Viktor Trigubov. He's a Ukrainian military spokesperson.
Okay.
And he says Russia's intentionally bypassing the city and even nearby Myrnarad to seize these settlements just south of them.
Okay.
So their goal is to disrupt those supply chains. Those crucial supply chains.
So they're cutting off Pokrovsk's lifeline, basically. Are there any particular locations in the article that kind of stand out in this strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one, the village of Udakte. Russian forces, they've reportedly captured it, and now they're right up against that Dnipropetrovsk border.
Oh, wow!
So this puts them within striking distance of that E50 highway.
Oh, right.
Which is, that's like the main artery.
Yeah.
Pumping those supplies into Pokrovsk and other major Ukrainian cities further west.
Right. So if they cut that highway, it's like a tourniquet on Ukraine's eastern defenses.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about a choke point. And what about those other villages mentioned in the article, like Yantarn? And Shevchenko.
Yeah, those are significant too. Yantar, it's south of Pokrovsk, and Shevchenko's southwest. Capturing those, along with the advances on Udakne and another village called Kotlin, it shows how Russia's systematically boxing in Pokrovsk.
Right.
It's classic pincer movement.
It's like they're playing Risk, but with like incredibly high stakes.
Yeah.
And this encirclement strategy is not just some new thing, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we've heard this before historically.
Oh yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah.
Encirclement has been a go-to move in warfare for centuries, really. I think about the siege of Stalingrad, World War II.
Right.
The Germans trying to encircle and starve out the Soviets there, but ultimately failed.
Right.
And that siege was incredibly brutal and really a turning point in the war.
Yeah.
What we're seeing in Pokrovsk, it echoes those tactics.
Yeah.
But with this, 21st century twist to it.
So it's Hannibal's playbook, but with modern weaponry.
Yeah.
And information warfare layered on top. Crazy how something's never changed.
Yeah.
But back to Pokrovsk. Even if Russia pulls this encirclement off, taking the city itself, that could be a whole other beast, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The article describes Pokrovsk as a fortress, and the Ukrainians they've had plenty of time to dig in and fortify their positions.
Yeah.
And we've learned from history that urban warfare is incredibly costly and challenging for the attacker, especially.
Right.
It's really
So even with a successful encirclement, Russia might be facing a grueling fight.
Oh yeah.
To actually capture the city. Talk about a potential turning point in the war.
Exactly. The outcome of this fight for Pokrovsk, it could have like ripple effects that extend far beyond the city itself. It could impact morale, international support, and even the course of future peace talks.
Right.
And speaking of those talks, there's another layer of complexity to consider.
Oh, right. President-elect Trump's inauguration is just around the corner, and he promised to end this war during the campaign.
Yeah.
So how does that play into all this strategic maneuvering on the ground? I mean, do you think the potential for peace talks could be influencing things now?
Oh, it's definitely a wild card.
Yeah.
Both sides might be trying to secure a decisive victory before those talks even begin, so they can come to the table.
A position of strength.
Exactly, kind of a last minute power play.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the very prospect of talks could also lead to a decrease in the intensity of the fighting.
Oh, interesting.
Neither side wants to risk heavy casualties or a major setback if there's a real chance for a negotiated solution.
Right.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yes,
right?
that's what you mean.
The talks could escalate things in the short term,
right? Yeah.
But also offer that path to de-escalation. It's almost like everyone's kind of holding their breath, waiting to see what happens next.
Right. And that's the thing, right? It's constantly evolving.
Exactly.
It's this, we've got this strategic chess match playing out on the ground.
Yeah.
With the added uncertainty of potential peace talks and a new U.S. administration.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is. Well, I think we've laid the groundwork here,
Yeah.
We've got this strategically vital city, a classic encirclement strategy in play.
Yeah.
And this looming possibility of peace talks. It's almost like a geopolitical thriller unfolding in real time.
Yeah, and the stakes are incredibly high.
Right.
Not just for Ukraine and Russia, but for the whole region.
Yeah.
Potentially the world, really. What happens in Pokrovsk, it could have these far-reaching consequences. But before we get into all that, maybe we should take a step back and look at kind of the broader implications of this fight.
All right, so before we jump into, the potential fallout, let's zoom out a little and see how this battle for Pokrovsk fits into the larger picture of the war.
Yeah, and I think what's really intriguing to me is how the outcome in Pokrovsk could have this domino effect,
right?
Impacting morale on both sides, the level of international support for Ukraine, and even Russia's willingness to compromise in any future negotiations.
Right.
It could really be a turning point, for better or worse.
Okay, so the stakes are even higher than we initially thought.
Yeah.
This isn't just about one city.
Yeah.
It's about the entire trajectory of the war.
Yeah.
And we've got this looming question of how President-elect Trump, will approach the situation once he's in office.
Exactly. His actions, even his inactions, could have a major impact on the course of events. But before we get ahead of ourselves,
right?
Maybe we should delve a little deeper into the potential consequences of a Russian victory or a Ukrainian hold in Pokrovsk.
All right, let's examine both scenarios and see how they could, reshape the landscape of this whole conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've kind of established this battle for Pokrovsk. It's a major turning point. I mean, potential ripple effects far beyond the city itself.
Right.
So let's dive into what those might actually look like.
Yeah.
Starting with, what happens if Russia actually manages to take the city?
Well, I mean, beyond just the territorial gains, a Russian victory in Pokrovsk, it would be a huge symbolic win. It would really demonstrate, their ability to overcome these heavily fortified positions,
right? Achieve
those strategic objectives, and that could have a major impact on morale,
right?
Both for their troops and for the Russian public back home.
So a real shot in the arm.
Yeah.
For their war effort. But wouldn't that also have kind of a demoralizing effect on the Ukrainians?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about a city that's been holding strong for a while now.
Yeah, losing Pokrovsk, especially after such a determined defense, it could lead to a real sense of disillusionment within Ukraine.
Yeah.
It could also raise these doubts about their ability to resist the Russian advance in the long run.
Yeah.
Potentially weakening their resolve to continue the fight,
And that's crucial, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because wars are often won by the side that believes it can win.
Exactly.
If Ukraine starts doubting its chances, that could be a slippery slope.
Exactly. Yeah. Wars they're as much about psychology as they are about, military hardware.
Right.
And we also have to consider, I think, the potential consequences for Ukraine's international support.
Right, because this war has become a global flashpoint, right? I mean, countries all over the world are kind of picking sides.
Yeah.
So how do you think a Russian victory in Pokrovsk would be perceived on that international stage?
Well, it could really embolden Russia, make them feel more confident in their military capabilities, less willing to compromise in any future peace negotiations. And it could also send a chilling message to other countries in the region, particularly those that have been relying on Western security guarantees.
So a win for Russia might make them feel like they have the upper hand, both militarily and diplomatically.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And what about the impact on Ukraine's allies?
Yeah.
Especially those providing them with, weapons and financial aid.
Right.
Could a Russian victory lead to a decrease in that support?
That's definitely a possibility. I mean, some countries might be hesitant to keep investing in a losing cause, especially if they start to, doubt Ukraine's ability to hold back the Russian advance. They might shift their focus toward containing the conflict rather than, helping Ukraine win it outright.
So the ramifications could be huge, both inside and outside Ukraine. It could really shift the entire balance of power in the region.
Yeah, that's right.
But let's flip the script for a second.
Okay.
What if, against all odds, Ukraine manages to hold on to Pokrovsk? What would that mean for the war?
Oh, well, that would be a game changer for sure. Both symbolically and strategically. It would show the world that Russia's not invincible.
Right.
That their military can be stopped, even when they're using these tactics like encirclement.
Right.
It would be a massive morale boost for Ukraine and a blow to Russia's this image of strength they've been trying to project.
So a real David versus Goliath moment.
Yeah.
Which could really galvanize, international support for Ukraine.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be hard for any country to deny them aid after such a display of resilience.
I think that's right. And strategically, holding Pokrovsk would deny Russia a key victory. Right. Preventing them from consolidating their control over that Donetsk region. It would also buy Ukraine valuable time to train and equip their forces, potentially allowing them to, launch counteroffensives and shift the momentum of the war, in their favor.
So a successful defense of Pokrovsk could be a turning point in the conflict, potentially pushing it towards a more favorable outcome for Ukraine.
That's right. But as we've discussed, there's another layer of complexity to consider.
Right.
That potential for peace talks.
Right.
And the unpredictable nature of the incoming U.S. administration.
Right.
How President-elect Trump chooses to engage with the conflict could have a profound impact on the course of the war, including the fate of Pokrovsk.
Right. And he promised to end the war during his campaign, but we still don't know what that will look like in practice. And the timing of these peace talks, coming right as a new administration takes office in the U.S., it just adds another layer of uncertainty. Exactly.
It's like we're watching this high stakes poker game with multiple players holding their cards close to their chest. Can analyze the possible outcomes.
Right.
But ultimately the final result depends on a lot of factors that are still unknown.
Okay. So we've got this incredibly complex situation unfolding with the battle for Pokrovsk at the center of it all.
Right.
But let's zoom in a little bit now. What are some of the specific on-the-ground factors that might actually determine who wins this fight?
Well, one crucial factor is the strength and resilience of those Ukrainian defenses we've been talking about. They've had time to fortify the city, prepare their positions, dig in for a potential siege.
Yeah.
Their ability to withstand Russian assaults, inflict casualties, and maintain their defensive lines. That's going to be key.
So it's not just about holding out. It's about making Russia pay a price.
Exactly.
For every inch they try to take. What about the Russian side?
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about their encirclement strategy, but what about the actual strength and capability of their forces?
Yeah, that's another critical factor.
Yeah.
While Russia has made advances in the region, their military has also suffered significant losses throughout the war.
Right.
Their ability to maintain that offensive momentum, effectively deploy their troops and equipment, and overcome those logistical challenges,
Yeah.
that'll be crucial to their success in Pokrovsk.
So it's not just about numbers.
No.
It's about effectiveness, logistics, their ability to adapt to a changing battlefield.
Yeah.
And we've also talked about the importance of morale, right?
Right.
Both for the troops on the ground and for the populations back home. How might that factor into the fight for Pokrovsk?
Well, as we mentioned, a successful defense of Pokrovsk, that could be a huge morale boost for Ukraine.
Right.
Reinforcing their belief in their ability to resist the invasion.
Yeah.
On the other hand, a prolonged siege with heavy casualties, that could have the opposite effect.
Right.
Eroding morale and public support.
And for Russia, a swift victory would bolster their confidence.
Yeah.
And determination. But a protracted and costly battle might lead to growing dissent.
Right.
And a questioning of the war's objectives back home.
Precisely. And we also can't overlook the role of external support, the continued flow of military aid and financial assistance from Ukraine's allies will be essential for their ability to sustain the fight, especially if they find themselves, under siege in Pokrovsk.
So the international community's willingness to stand with Ukraine, both in terms of material support and political pressure on Russia, could have a significant impact on the battlefield.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the wild card in all of this,
right.
The potential for peace talks and the unpredictable nature of the incoming U.S. administration.
Right.
How President-elect Trump chooses to engage with the conflict and the leverage he's willing to exert. That could have a profound impact on the course of the war, including the fate of Pokrovsk.
So we have this fascinating interplay of military strength, morale.
Yeah.
International support,
right.
and political maneuvering,
yeah.
all converging on this one strategically vital city.
And that's what makes this situation so compelling and so unpredictable. We have these multiple layers of complexity with each factor potentially influencing the others,
right?
Creating a dynamic and ever-shifting landscape.
Well, we've certainly explored the depths of this conflict, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've analyzed the strategic importance of Pokrovsk, the potential implications of its capture, the key factors that could determine the battle's outcome, and the uncertainty surrounding potential peace talks.
And throughout this deep dive, I think we've emphasized the importance of nuanced analysis, critical thinking, and considering multiple perspectives. There are no easy answers or simple predictions when it comes to a conflict of this magnitude.
Absolutely. And as the situation continues to unfold, we encourage you to stay engaged, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions. The future of Pokrovsk and perhaps the broader trajectory of the Russia-Ukraine war, it hangs in the balance.
And that makes it all the more crucial for us to stay informed, engaged, and committed to seeking a deeper understanding of this complex conflict and its global implications, really.
Okay, so we've talked about all the big picture stuff, the implications of this battle for Pokrovsk, but let's get down to the nitty gritty here. What are we actually seeing, on the ground that could tip the scales one way or the other? We've been calling Pokrovsk a fortress, but just how strong are those Ukrainian defenses, really?
Well, I think about it this way, Pokrovsk has essentially been on a war footing for years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They've had time to dig in, build up those layers of fortifications and establish those fallback positions.
Yeah.
It's not just about concrete and barbed wire either. They've had time to train their troops for urban combat,
right?
Which completely different. compared to fighting in open fields.
Right. So they're not just waiting for Russia to show up. They're prepared to make them pay dearly for every block.
Exactly. Yeah.
But Russia's no slouch either. I mean, we've seen them adapt and evolve their tactics throughout this war.
Absolutely. They've learned from their early setbacks, and they're using a more, methodical combined arms approach now.
Right.
But the question is, can they sustain that offensive momentum?
Yeah. Especially
against a determined defender in a heavily fortified city.
And that brings us back to logistics, which we've touched on before.
Right.
Can Russia keep those supply lines flowing, especially if they get bogged down in a long, protracted urban battle?
Yeah, that's a huge unknown, and one of the key challenges of encirclement is that it stretches your own supply lines while you're trying to cut off the enemies.
Right.
So the longer this fight drags on, the more those logistical challenges will come into play for both sides, really.
So it's a race against time. In a way.
Yeah, in a way it is.
Mm-hmm. And then there's that wild card.
Yeah.
Of those potential peace talks. Could we see a scenario where both sides kind of ease up on the fighting? Mm-hmm. As those negotiations get underway.
It's possible. Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to be seen as the aggressor if there's a genuine chance for a diplomatic solution.
Right.
But at the same time, both sides might try to, grab as much territory as they can beforehand.
Right.
Thinking it'll give them leverage at the negotiating table.
So a rush to kind of secure bargaining chips.
Yeah.
Before everyone sits down to talk. And then there's the big question mark, of President-elect Trump. How is he going to handle this whole situation? Could he be the ultimate decider in all of this?
I mean, it's really a mystery.
Yeah.
His approach to the war, it remains unclear. He could double down on support for Ukraine, provide them with even more advanced weaponry, or he could take a more hands-off approach.
Right.
Pushing for a quick settlement, even if it favors Russia and the impact of his decisions, even his indecision. I mean, it could be profound.
So we've got all these moving pieces,
yeah.
The tactical situation on the ground, the psychological impact on both sides, the international community watching closely, and a new unpredictable player entering the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's enough to make your head spin.
And that's what makes this such a fascinating, albeit worrying situation.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers. There are no clear predictions.
Right.
But by examining all these factors, by thinking critically and considering different perspectives, we can at least try to make sense of this complex and ever evolving conflict.
Well said. We've dug deep into this battle for Pokrovsk, exploring its strategic significance, the potential outcomes, and the key factors that could determine its fate. We've also highlighted the crucial role of international support,
right,
and that looming uncertainty of a new U.S. administration.
Right, and ultimately, I think the message we want to leave you with is this: stay engaged, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah.
This war is far from over, and its ramifications will continue to shape the geopolitical landscape for years to come.
The fate of Pokrovsk and perhaps even the future of Ukraine, it hangs in the balance. Until next time, everyone, stay curious. Yeah.